I was baking an apple pie when I found out my marriage was over. Not metaphorically. Literally. I had just pulled it from the oven. Golden crust, the scent of cinnamon filling the kitchen. It was the kind of day that felt like a promise. A little warm sun through the windows. A little music. And a message from my husband, saying he'd be home late again. He was always working late. At least, that's what I used to believe. Until I dropped my phone behind the kitchen cabinet. And while crawling on all fours to fish it out, I noticed something strange. His old tablet, the one he said he lost 6 months ago, buried behind a stack of boxes like it didn't want to be found. I turned it on, still logged into his email. The first message that popped up was titled, "Last night was perfect," with 3 red hearts, from a name I didn't recognize. But when I opened it, I saw my husband's face, smiling in bed, next to a woman wearing nothing but his shirt. And I swear, I could still smell the pie cooling behind me while my world turned to ash. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat on the floor, pie on the counter, betrayal in my lap. You think in a moment like that you'd scream, throw something. But all I did was whisper, "Of course." That night, he came home smelling of wine and guilt. He kissed me like always, asked if I saved him a piece. And I did. I handed him a slice of the pie I baked while he was being unfaithful. He took a bite and said, "God, you're still the best thing that ever happened to me." And I smiled, because he had no idea what was coming. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because I knew one thing for sure. If he had a secret life, then I would become his worst-kept secret. One that walks, talks, and carries receipts. And just like that, the pie became the last sweet thing I ever made for him. The next morning, I started making copies of everything. Emails, messages, hotel bookings, even screenshots of their little selfies together. At rooftop bars, cheap motels, and God help me in our bed, there was a picture of her wearing my robe. The one with the embroidered C on the pocket. She posed in my mirror like she already lived there. Like I'd been quietly evicted from my own life. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because if I had learned anything from my husband, it was that timing is everything. At dinner, he told me he was flying to Chicago for a client meeting. I kissed his cheek, packed his suitcase, and made sure to slip in a little surprise. A small voice recorder, tucked inside a rolled-up pair of socks. He didn't notice. He never noticed anything that wasn't about him. The audio I got was gold. Her voice, his voice, all the lies, all the planning, how they joked about finally getting rid of the housewife. That night, while listening to the recording, I didn't cry either. I laughed, because I realized they were idiots. 2 narcissists, so drunk on their own story. They forgot I was the one who built this life they were so desperate to steal. I went to our lawyer the next morning. Yes, our lawyer. Because I paid his retainer 3 years ago when we rewrote our wills. Funny how betrayal makes you remember receipts. I sat across from the man who had notarized our vows, our house, and our trust, and said, "I need to update some documents and possibly burn a man alive, legally speaking." He smiled. "Tell me everything." By the end of the hour, we had a plan. Not just a divorce. An elegant, surgical extraction of me from him, with a trail of evidence so tight, even his mistress would feel it. Meanwhile, I kept playing the role, smiling over dinner, laughing at his dumb jokes, acting like I didn't know he was planning to leave me, so I could be the one to leave first. And just as I was about to file, something happened that made my blood run cold. I came home early and found her in my kitchen, wearing a smug smile and a silk blouse that used to be mine. She said, not surprised at all. "I didn't think you'd be home this soon." And then she had the audacity, the unholy courage, to pour herself a glass of wine from my favorite bottle and say, He said you'd be cool about this. That you were done anyway. I didn't scream. Didn't hit her. Didn't even flinch. I just took out my phone and recorded everything. Her words. Her tone. Her total confidence. Because she had no idea that walking into my house was walking into a trap. I smiled and said, "You're right. I am done." Then I left her there, with her wine, and the growing realization that she had just made a mistake bigger than her knockoff handbag, and that was just the beginning. The next day, I filed for divorce, but not just any divorce. A scorched earth, legally airtight, evidence-stuffed masterpiece of a divorce. My lawyer, bless his cold, brilliant heart, looked over the files and whispered, "We're not just winning, we're rewriting the ending." We served him at his office, in front of his assistant, and his precious boardroom full of people he desperately wanted to impress. I heard he turned the color of skim milk, then rage red, then ghost white. His little side piece, well, she was served next, in the parking lot of her Pilates studio, right after she posted an Instagram story captioned, "Manifesting love and loyalty." Ironic, since what was manifesting now was a restraining order and a subpoena. But here's the kicker. He thought I'd be generous, split the assets, play nice, because he still thought I was his Christina, the good girl, the quiet one who never raised her voice, never asked where he really was, never made a scene. Except I wasn't her anymore. She died the day I found that voice memo in his sock drawer. I froze all our joint accounts, canceled his access to the lake house, and, my personal favorite, rerouted the insurance payout from my jewelry to a fund for women leaving abusive relationships. And then came the cameras. See, he had forgotten about the new security system I installed last winter. The one with facial recognition, sound-activated backups, and automatic cloud uploads. I had footage of her sneaking into the house, of him yelling at me, calling me delusional, of her taking my clothes, my shoes, even my damn hairbrush. And one little gem, where she said, "I mean, once we're married, I want everything. Not just the house, the name." Yes, she wanted to be me. So badly. She forgot I was still alive. We brought all the footage to court. My lawyer edited it together like a Netflix miniseries, complete with timestamps, close-ups, and one perfectly timed slow-motion moment of her tripping on my Persian rug, wine glass in hand. And you know what? The judge watched every second. Didn't blink. Didn't smirk. Just turned to them and said, "This is a very expensive kind of stupidity." I almost applauded. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because remember that smug little comment she made in my kitchen? He said you'd be cool about this. Well, turns out she recorded a few things too. And sent them to her sister. Her sister, who, shockingly, had a moral compass and a LinkedIn job at a legal firm. Guess who emailed me those recordings? With the subject line, "You deserve better. Burn him." Oh, honey, I plan to. The recordings were gold. No, better than gold. They were leverage. In one of them, he said, laughing, "If she ever fights back, I'll just say she's unstable. You know how emotional she gets." Then, he laughed again, and she joined in. In another, she whispered, "What if she finds out about the Cayman account?" And he said, "She won't, unless she grows a brain overnight." Well, guess who had a brain now? And a lawyer. And an email folder labeled "Justice, baby." We filed a motion to re-examine the prenup. Turns out, hiding offshore accounts while pretending to be broke violates about 7 clauses, and also several laws. The judge agreed, with the same expression people wear when they step in something disgusting. My lawyer smirked. I didn't. Not yet. I was saving my smile for something spectacular. Then came the public hearing. I wore a soft gray suit, pearl earrings, and just a touch of the perfume he used to love. To haunt him. They came in late. He looked tired. She looked nervous. And a little bloated. The courtroom was quiet. Until my lawyer pressed play. We had synced the audio with the security footage. Split screen. One side, him screaming. Other side, her sneaking in. Their voices, clear as crystal. You could hear the judge's pen stop moving. Even the bailiff raised an eyebrow. And then, came the quote that sealed it. She doesn't even know what's hers anymore. I own that woman. Oh, really? Because 5 minutes later, the judge said, I don't think you'll be owning much of anything from now on. Assets frozen. Cayman account flagged. Restraining orders granted. And suddenly, their lawyers started sweating like a lawn sprinkler. But my favorite moment, watching her face, when she realized she wasn't going to be the rich wife. She was going to be a co-defendant. They tried to settle, of course. Sent me offers. Texts. A bouquet of flowers. Laughable. And a voice message. From him. Can we just talk? No. We cannot. I didn't reply. I just forwarded everything to my lawyer. And then, I booked a table. At the fancy restaurant downtown. The one we used to go to for anniversaries. I went alone. Ordered the exact wine he used to say was too expensive. And toasted. To my own damn freedom. At the next table, a couple was celebrating their engagement. She asked, what's the secret to a long, happy marriage? I sipped my wine, smiled, and said, don't marry a man who calls you crazy when he's lying. She blinked. He laughed nervously. I raised my glass again. To karma. To cameras. To being underestimated. Because now, I was the woman with the footage. The files. The facts. And a seat at the table. And baby, I wasn't giving it up for anyone. The media picked up the case. Of course they did. We had drama, betrayal, fraud, hidden money, and a blonde mistress who wore sunglasses to court like it was Cannes. It started with a local article, then a podcast. Then suddenly, my inbox was full of strangers calling me a heroine. Funny. A few weeks ago, I was just a crying woman in a cold kitchen. Now I was ex-wife of the year. They wanted interviews, TV appearances, a book deal. I ignored most of it, but I let my lawyer talk to the financial journalists. Let the facts speak. Let their dirty laundry flap in the wind for everyone to see. I didn't have to scream anymore. I just had to forward. And wait. Then came the second hearing. This one was about the house. My house. The one I chose. Furnished. Filled with birthday candles and quiet mornings. He wanted half. She wanted to move in. She even had the nerve to say in court, I've always loved the bay windows. Oh, have you? Did you love them before or after you slept with my husband on the living room couch? I said none of that. Just smiled. And handed the judge Exhibit C. Security footage. From the living room. April 12th. Her. Without pants. Even the clerk gasped. The judge cleared her throat and said, Ms. Ramirez, you may want to reconsider your claim of emotional investment in this property. The lawyer next to her tried to whisper something. But she was already crying. Mascara down her cheek. Pity. It was waterproof. As for him, he just stared at the table like it might open up and swallow him. I didn't gloat. Not yet. Gloating was for amateurs. I wanted closure. So I waited until after the ruling. The judge handed down the decision like a hymn. The house remains sole property of the plaintiff. The defendants have 72 hours to vacate. Cue her sobs. Cue his silence. Cue me. Finally breathing again. That night, I returned to my house. Alone. No ghosts. No gaslighting. Just me. And the bay windows. I ordered Indian food. sat on the floor, lit a candle, and laughed. Laughed like I hadn't in months. The kind of laugh that comes from surviving something absurd, something vile, and winning. Then my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in years. Tasha. The woman he dated before me. The one he said was too dramatic. Too needy. She wrote, "Hey, I've been watching the case. I have something you might want to see." And just like that, my next chapter walked in wearing red lipstick and carrying revenge on a USB stick. She showed up at my door the next morning. Tasha, in a black trench coat, sunglasses, and that kind of lipstick that says, "I came prepared. I made coffee." She declined. "Too much caffeine makes me generous," she said, and slid the USB across my table like it was a weapon. I thought I was crazy. She started. Back then, when he told me I was the problem, that I was insecure, that I was imagining things. I knew that script. Word for word. I'd lived it. Slept next to it. Cooked dinner for it. Tasha had done more than just survive. She had collected evidence. On that USB were screenshots, emails, text messages he'd sent while we were married. To her. To other women. To someone named Vanilla Kisses 92. He recycled the same lines. The same promises. The same sob stories. Like a low-budget soap opera with no new episodes. But that wasn't all. There were wire transfers. Documents with fake names. One even had my name forged. Again. I was furious, but not surprised. Then she said the thing that made me put my mug down. "He told me he was planning to pin the offshore account on you. Said you were too naive to notice anyway." My breath caught. Not because of the insult, but because it was true. I had been naive, trusting, hopeful, soft, and he had carved that softness into a weakness, a liability, a scapegoat. Not anymore. That afternoon, my lawyer filed new paperwork, added Tasha's evidence to the case, and we sent copies to the IRS, to the day, and just for fun, to his corporate HR department. I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted the truth to do it. And it was working. His accounts were frozen. His new girlfriend left town. His face was splashed across every gossip site with headlines like, "Investment advisor or investment liar?" Classy. I didn't even need to press charges. The government did it for me. Turns out, they don't love when you funnel money through shell companies in Belize. Shocker. And just when I thought the storm had passed, there was a knock at my door. This time, it wasn't a woman, or a lawyer, or a news crew. It was a man I hadn't seen in years. He looked older, tired, wearing that awkward half-smile men put on when they know they've screwed up. "Hey," he said. "I heard about everything. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." It was his brother. The one who stopped talking to me when I ruined the family. The one who now knew. I hadn't ruined anything. I just stopped pretending. We talked. 4 hours. Laughed about old memories. And at one point, he looked at me, real soft, and said, "You always deserved better. I'm glad you finally got it. I didn't expect it. But it felt nice. Maybe not romantic. Not yet. But human. And after everything, that was more than enough." It's been 6 months, and I still keep a copy of that USB in a little ceramic bowl on my entryway table, right next to the keys, and a stick of peppermint lip balm. Not because I need it anymore, but because it reminds me that the truth always leaves a paper trail. The court case was swift, predictably messy, emotionally draining, but satisfying. He tried to fake illness, to delay things, claimed stress-induced amnesia. I told my lawyer, let's ask the court to test if his memory returns at the sight of jail time. Miraculously, it did. The judge didn't even flinch. He handed down restitution orders, sanctions, and a permanent note on his record. My name was cleared. Legally, publicly, and emotionally. I walked out of that courthouse in nude heels, a navy dress, and sunglasses I didn't need, just because I could. And guess who was waiting at the steps, holding a takeout coffee and 2 croissants? Yep, Tasha. I figured you didn't eat, she said. And I didn't. Not until that first buttery bite. We weren't friends, but we were sisters in survival now. There's a certain respect that only comes from shared war zones. I still get texts from his new ex every now and then. Apparently, he's found God and wants to start over in Guatemala. She hopes he finds a volcano and falls in. I wish him nothing. Absolutely nothing. Silence is a beautiful form of closure. And me? I didn't move out. I renovated. New paint. New curtains. New locks. New mattress. Because no memory should get to haunt where I sleep. The backyard? I turned it into a garden. Planted tomatoes. Basil. A pomegranate tree. They say it takes time to grow roots again. They were right. But my hands were ready. And one morning, while tying back the vines, a little girl peeked over the fence. "Are you the lady who beat the bad man?" she asked. I paused, then smiled. "I guess I am." She nodded like I'd passed some kind of test, then asked if she could have one of my tomatoes. "Only if you promise to wash it first," I said. She grinned and ran off. Victory, apparently, tastes better with dirt under your nails. Later that week, I went to a gallery opening. Rebecca insisted. Said I needed to reintegrate with humanity. The wine was average. The art was pretentious. And the man next to me smelled like sandalwood and moral integrity. We talked for an hour. Then 2. Then somehow ended up eating pancakes at midnight in a diner with sticky menus and fluorescent lights. He didn't ask about my ex, or my case, or my past. He asked about my favorite scent. I said fresh basil and old books. He smiled, wrote that down, and when he walked me to my car, he said, "I don't know what you've been through, but I'm glad you made it through it." I didn't cry, but I almost did. And maybe that's the point. The scars don't vanish, but they don't define the next chapter either. In the end, I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need an apology. What I needed was to look in the mirror and see someone I respected. Someone who had been shattered and still chose to rebuild. I got that. I earned it. And just last week, the pomegranate tree bloomed. I picked the first fruit, cut it open, and laughed. Because it was a little sour, a little sweet, and just complicated enough to be perfect. Exactly like me.